Hello, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Be My Guest. Thankfully, addiction is becoming less of a taboo in society, and it's hugely important and beneficial that there are a lot more discussions about it, particularly when it comes to alcohol, drug and gambling addiction. But there are still a lot of misconceptions about addiction and addicts, and there is still a lot more work to be done for most people to truly understand what addiction is and why people become addicted. But I don't think the same can be said for all addictions though, because I believe there is still a lot of stigma attached to those that are less talked about, such as sex, porn, technology, or in the case of today's guest, shopping. They're often labelled as not real addictions and just an excuse for behaviour. Well, it was an addiction for Santis O'Garro. I wanted to understand from her why a shopping addiction needs to be treated in the same way as an alcohol or drug addiction, and she explained to me in minute detail what went on in her mind that led her to making that purchase, and subsequently how it made her feel afterwards. Well, I can now say with confidence that shopping addiction is real, and it needs to be taken and treated seriously. And here's why. So you were born in Montserrat, which is a Caribbean island, and you lived there until you were 10 years old, is that right?
Yes, I was 10,
10.
just vacating 10 and going on to 11. But yes,
What's your
it was
memories of living there?
um it was pretty happy. I kind of now as I'm older, I look back and your memories, the more aware you are of where you are now
Mm-hmm.
and who you are as I'm growing. I look back and I think of myself back then as happy poor.
Mm.
You know, that kind of poor where you didn't realize that you didn't, because you weren't struggling in that sense, but you didn't have all the bits and pieces that, maybe your peers might have had,
Mm.
but we had our imagination and we just made the best of it. I had a great childhood.
So I guess in a sense
Just,
you were financially poor but
yeah,
rich in your life.
100%. Yes, very much so. And it's almost what I'm chasing now,
Mm.
that richness. It's the simplicity of it all and being totally connected to just land, nature, and your creativity,
Mm-hmm.
and connected with the people that are around you. That's really what matters.
Mm-hmm. What
But
what
so it
what
was a good life.
It was a good life. And
It's a good life.
what people did you have back there?
So I had all my family members were in Montserrat at the time. Now they're scattered all over the world. I had my aunt, which she was my godmother, but you would kind of call over there, you call your elders, they be your auntie, sister. You don't call them by their name either
Mm-hmm.
way. It wouldn't, like my kids would call their godmother now Olivia, but you just wouldn't, it's Auntie Olivia, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um, so there was always that respect, but I had all my family members and I just had people that I grew up with. And for me, it just felt, I took that for granted. And I think
Mm.
a lot of people do who have emigrated. You take for granted the village that you need, you
Mm.
know.
Why did you leave?
Well, my mom met Dermot, who is Irish, and they fell in love. They were with each other since I was 6. And I think it was kind of like next step. And they moved over here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty shocking.
Mm. Big culture difference.
Big culture difference. I couldn't have, it was a wake up moment for me, but I think now it's probably one of the most beautiful things because you realize how different life can be, and you can only fully realize that when you've experienced different cultures,
Mm.
and I really have within Dublin and the Caribbean seen things that are so alike and so different.
Did you have siblings coming over here with you?
I did. It was me and my two brothers. I'm the eldest now, so there's 2 years in between both of us.
Mm-hmm.
In between all of us, and then I have my sister who was born in Ireland then.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was all three of us. It was even an adventure coming over because my mom came over first a year ahead, and she organized. They bought a house, and they organized everything in that way. Worked their butts off
Mm-hmm.
to have something for us to come over to. And when we came over, then we were on our own, so we were in care of British Airways, which was really cool. And
Right.
I could actually remember the plane ride where my brother kept on pressing the button for the poor air hostess to come with another can of Coke. He could not get over the fact that it was unlimited. And I remember he was in the middle, and I was like, oh my God. Even at that age, I was like, what are you doing? Here we go
Mm-hmm.
again. Bing. And the lady was smiling on her face. And I remember we got to see the captain, and, it was, you take for granted all those things as kids. But lately, I've just been thinking back about that journey coming over to a new environment and a new world.
Mm.
And, the stark differences of when we arrived all of a sudden, little things that I thought was important. It was almost a whole reset again.
Mm.
And then the cold,
Yes.
just we were lucky enough that we arrived in May, so
Mm-hmm.
that was good. I thought like first I was like, oh my God, this is lovely, and then we arrived, and a semi-detached house. We were living in terrace houses. So my mom got a mid terrace, and I remember thinking that she bought the whole, like, there's four in a block. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, wow,
Yeah.
when mom said they were working, they were in Ireland working. Like, wow, this is a big house. And the garden's not like, I was like, I didn't understand why the gardens were separated, but I have never seen a terraced house.
Mm.
So in the Caribbean, you got your house, you have your land
Mm.
around it, and no matter how small, it was yours. And you had your little space around, so you'd
Yeah.
walk around. We didn't have terrace houses in Montserrat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick that one as my room. Couldn't believe it. A door to myself, away from my brothers. And then mom's like, no, that's our house.
Yeah. So I guess in a sense that's where your sort of relationship with money started
Yeah,
and possessions, isn't it? Because
yeah.
you thought you were, I know, in a sense, a millionaire because of these houses and because of what you now have compared to what you had.
Yes. I thought that because in the Caribbean, it's almost like this boastful thing where Montserrat is a British, I wouldn't say it's British territories. We can't say colony anymore, which is
Mm-hmm.
only right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Montserrat is over there. So we all think that when we have family, they send money back. So we had families that I have aunts, like most of my great grand aunts, they either live in, some part of Europe, or they live in the UK because they could travel in and out. And they'd send stuff back. It's a tradition, you send barrels back at Christmas. So you just assume that Europe is rich,
Mm.
which is an eye opener. But so as a child, I just assume, okay, we're moving to Europe. We're gonna be rich. Like that's all I knew. I didn't know anything else about. I didn't know anything about Ireland except for St. Patrick's Day because Montserrat is the Emerald Isle of the Caribbean.
Mm.
Although it's for different reasons over there. Um, we that's what I knew about Ireland. That's about it.
Mm.
Green,
Mm.
nothing else. Like even though Dermot was Irish, he tried to tell us stuff, but you can't relate to it when it's a different world. You're like,
Mm.
all right, yeah. And he'll tell us about the zoo because we've never seen like a zoo. And he's like, there's giraffes. I was like, giraffes in a zoo, not in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be little things like that really made me think. But you're definitely right there, Rory. There's a relationship with money, that's probably earlier than even when I arrived. Your earliest environment is what shapes you.
Mm.
So if you're looking outward all along and you're thinking, to be rich or it's out there,
Mm-hmm.
you'll chase it,
Mm-hmm. So when do you think you started to chase it? Was that in your teenage years?
Yeah, when the no's start becoming a little bit more apparent.
Mm. Mm.
When you're saying to my mom is a Caribbean mother, which is where they're very straight.
Mm-hmm.
We are. I'm a Caribbean mother as well, with an Irish influence in it, But it's a very you can't have that, and that's that. You'll respect it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no argument and there's no explanation, which I don't necessarily think is right.
Mm-hmm.
But
So,
I I'd ask for stuff. Can I get runners? Because my friends had runners. And they wasn't just normal runners. They were Nike Air Max.
mm-hmm.
And then my mom would look at the price. And now looking back, they just got a mortgage. They say,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that wasn't a me getting Nike Air Max was not a
Yeah.
priority.
So
Looking after three kids,
if
you
mum's
know.
saying no, how do you get the money?
I was like, my first job was age 12 and I worked on the milk round. Now, that was a fun job because everybody in Donnycarney, where I grew up, everybody kind of worked with Joe at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go around and you collect the money for people. And it just meant that he didn't have to get out of the van. That was really it. And we got a fiver and we went, you'd save. And then I remember the proudest moment when I was able to go, well, I have £50 now
Mm-hmm.
to go towards the runners. And I think she only had to add like £10 or £20. I was like, I got them, I saw them here and they reduced. And, really I was hustling to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom grudgingly was like, okay, because she had to respect that, She was actually she told me now that she was proud. The fact that that's resilience, and that's go getting. And it's when you think about it, it comes back up later in life when you really need it.
Mm.
Those lessons that a lot of people don't get. So in one sense, I'm like, I'm happy that you didn't give me everything, but I wish you went around it in a better way of explaining why instead of a no, don't question.
Yeah. When did it start for you to live beyond your means? Because you've had that £50 that
Yeah.
you saved, and quite rightly you're able to buy those Nike trainers. That's fine because you earned it. But when did the borrowing and the loans start?
When I realized that just having the same runners was not enough to make me fit in, it became like, what else can I have? I want the tracksuit. I want, like I want to fit into this environment because when you move from what you know to what you don't know, there's a
Mm-hmm.
loneliness that I don't think that a lot of people would really know, especially in Ireland. Like we moved, 95 and there was no black people
Mm-hmm.
in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
There was one other family, in my school. There was no one like me. There was no one I can really relate to.
Mm.
And I just did everything to try and fit in because I felt what I know now was just really lonely and lost. Um, we didn't have, you could just WhatsApp somebody a video call to your family member in the Caribbean. Back then, you couldn't just, Zoom them
Mm-hmm.
and say, how's this? And then shortly after I arrived, there was a volcanic eruption in Montserrat. I mean, this is a Hollywood story. There was a volcanic eruption in Montserrat, and people that were there, they were then moved to the UK, all over the UK. You had family members that moved to Florida. So everybody was kind of just separated.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew we couldn't go back. Well, I knew I couldn't go back because I really did want to in the early days. And because everything had changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just spent that time just trying to fit in, deep unhappiness, and I just wanted to fit in. I was always a smiley person, and I thought like that feeling of being seen when I got my first loan, the fact that they just like gave it to me and I was like 17 on my first holiday.
You were
And
17.
yeah, well, to be honest with you, my dad, who didn't like, he's not, he wouldn't be into loans or anything like that. But,
Mm,
and what's funny about this, they wouldn't allowed me out after 9:30. I wasn't
right.
allowed out, but I was allowed to go to Cyprus
Well, by yourself.
with my friends. Yeah.
Wow. How
Yeah.
much? How much did you take out on the loan?
750, and I saved 250, and I had the
Oh.
notice of like 3 weeks that we were going, and I couldn't believe my mom and dad said yes. Um, so yeah, I couldn't believe they said yes, to be honest.
Right, and that was from the credit union.
Yeah, and my
Yeah.
dad co-signed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I didn't think I was doing that in bad, Rory.
Yeah.
No one did. None of my friends did. We all got credit union loans.
How long did it take
It's
to pay it back?
I never did.
Did you not?
It was. I tell you why. It was a top up.
Mm.
I just topped it up all the time. That was my. I never stopped getting loans until I was 36, till I started my debt
Wow.
free journey. I never stopped.
So that really was the gateway.
It is the gateway, and if you think about it, and this is not an attack, we have to be really careful of how things are being introduced in our schools. If you tell me there's a saving program and I join up with you and you're trusted in my community, I start getting loans because this is pretty normal and this is what everybody does with no other financial education
Mm-hmm.
except that my mum and dad saved their butts off and got a house, and my dad doesn't really know anything about loans. He thinks, the credit union is great, and there's nothing wrong with the credit union. It helps a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But for a kid who's just getting that, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I thought I was rejected, for some reason, it all came into getting that loan. Watching, I could see the lady counting the 50s out.
Mm.
That there's this feeling of just euphoria.
Mm-hmm.
I am getting, look at those wads of money,
Yeah.
and it's all coming to me.
And
I'm after doing something right for them, for this fancy place to give me that money.
did that allow you at that time to fit in with those friends?
Yes, it did. Had
Yeah.
a great holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see the connection is I go and get things and then I have a great time.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is you come home and you have to pay back that credit union loan. You bring the holiday back home with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get it down. And then you say, what else is there? Because for me, working, I worked on the milk truck, the bingo hall. I worked in pubs. I worked in Dunn stores as my first job. That was when I got the credit union loan based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Thursdays and Saturdays. So working wasn't the problem. It's never been the problem. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. That's not the problem for me. It's working so hard and not realizing that, hey, if you actually just look at the way you're saving here, you won't have to escape from this. Or maybe, you won't have to escape from this by getting this holiday loan or getting this loan for a new outfit. I used to get loans for a night out.
Did you?
Yeah, like Friday, like get a credit card. Like I couldn't believe when my first credit card arrived. I was
Uh-huh.
like, what? If you think a 20-year-old getting a credit card for like 2.5 grand,
Wow.
because it's based on your income, what you
Mm-hmm.
earn.
Mm-hmm. And
So if
you were
I'm
earning.
working away, yeah, if I'm working away and then I'm getting all this, I have no financial literacy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the program now, and that's what it is. It's a program.
And
Um,
there was no one to stop that cycle. By the sounds of it, there was no one to step in to
no,
say, "Hang on a minute, Santis, live within your means here."
no. My mom said I had a shopping problem, which is right. And now, no, I'm a spendaholic. My mom said that I know that I knew I had a problem because I had to run up the stairs before I opened the door to the sitting room
Mm-hmm.
and then come back down. What was happening? Oh, I thought something happened. I had to run up there 1 minute. What are you hiding? Heard the bags, do you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I knew I had a problem in that sense, but I didn't know why. And if you don't know why you have a problem, you're never going to fix it.
Of course not.
And it was based on emotions. If I felt a little low on myself, like when you think of any kind of addiction, it's based on something in you that you're seeking.
Mm-hmm.
So I was seeking validation. I thought having a new outfit every day would make the singular black girl fit in with everybody else. And this is not even about race, it's not about color, but it is as well because we're all different in some ways. And inclusion is such a big part on any level for me. So I get it when you're sitting in a room and it's diverse. I get it when they say, "Yeah, I have a spending problem," because it manifests in different ways and manifests in different addictions. But that was mine. That was
Mm.
my drug. I loved the buzz of it. Wouldn't be the clothes at the end of it. They didn't really make me happy. It was that thrill of going in. Sometimes it'd be if I went to Brown Thomas and they were rapping. I got perfume or something, and you see them wrapping everything up. It's the experience of it, of feeling your self worth, you know,
Mm.
linked to that. And if you have to think at that time, it was the Victoria Beckham wags, footballers' wives. That was the era of it. So that's what we were all sold as kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you are what you consume. So that's what I was seeing. I was like, I want to be like them.
Mm-hmm.
I think my boyfriend at the time, he was a footballer as well. Like I want to be like, I want that life.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
So it's interesting because I think that there's still a huge stigma around addiction as a whole, and I think that we're better at understanding alcohol addiction, gambling addiction, drug addiction, but I still think there's those taboo addictions like shopping or porn or things like that, and people say, well, they're not real addictions, are they?
yeah, they're not real addiction except when they affect your life in a way that it just gets dark. When like it's not okay, drugs and alcohol, you can see how it physically breaks down your health. But the other side of it, it's the mental impact as well. So a shopping addiction, how is that going to affect you? If you say money worries, if anybody believes that money worries can affect your mental health, they can't ignore a shopping addiction. Because when you're addicted to something, it doesn't matter where you get the money from, you're going to get the money and spend.
Mm.
And your impulse buying, your emotional buying, you feel down, you need your fix. And it could be the case, and you can't run from it. And sometimes I almost think, well, if there's a whole machine that's built for us to buy and overconsume, of course it's not going to be seen as a problem because it's so normalized for us to equate our emotions with a purchase.
Mm.
Where it's your self worth, where our self worth is so pitted and so conjoined with consumerism
And it's
and
really,
showing up as your best self that they're not going to take it seriously when it comes to because the machine is pushing that. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is somebody who is saying this is what it is.
mm-hmm. And it's really interesting what you say because I've never heard that before. With the shopping addiction, it's not about the possession at the end of it. It's not about sitting at home and looking at all your lovely clothes or your possessions.
You're in
It's,
shame, Ben. That's what shows up at the end. You're
oh, I
ashamed. You know that yeah.
see. Oh, I
That just
see.
for me that represented especially if you're in financial difficulties because of it.
Mm.
You feel like if I was to explain this like 100% and just going back in my mind and being at my lowest, I'm failing. I'm a failure.
Mm-hmm.
I am walking around smiling with things that everybody thinks. I had the nice an Audi A4 Cabriolet. I was showing up. I had no money in my bank account. But you didn't know that because I looked good. Even though I didn't have the petrol to put in that car, the money to put petrol in the car. And when something went wrong, I was literally trembling with fear to find out where am I going to get it from. And then I feel that, then you get that cycle of feeling so low on yourself because why'd you buy the car in the first place? But you can't say that to anybody
Mm-hmm.
because you know that was a weak moment. I bought it because I broke up with my boyfriend of 7 years and I just wanted him to see me looking well. You see what I mean about the outward?
Mm-hmm.
He needs to see me looking well. And how do I show him? By buying something that he would never even think I can have. And all of a sudden, if he just sees a glimpse of me, he's going to go, wow. And then he's going to love me again.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge lack of self-worth that's connected with that as well. And if you're from a household that said no, or maybe you're from a household where, you maybe you never seen your mom earn money. Like there's so many different reasons that build towards that, but mine was a lack of self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got worse. The more I spent, the more accumulated. You know, it just played on me. And even in work, they used to call me 5 minutes because I'd have a tough moment in work. And I go, oh, just give me 5 minutes. I'll be gone for an hour and come back with bags.
Wow.
And they're like, oh, here's 5 minutes back. It was a joke.
Mm.
But no one saw it as anything wrong
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't see it. I didn't think it was anything wrong. I went shopping. Look what I got. Oh, the mood would be up. By the time I go home, by the time I got that bus home, and I'm looking at all the stuff that half of them I won't wear, it just represents shame. What'd you get that for? And it went to a point where I could almost pinpoint what happened because of what I bought. I bought that because we split up. I bought that because someone shouted at me today in the street. I bought that because of that. I bought that. I could tell you every reason why I was buying.
Mm-hmm.
And the outfits, and they didn't represent anything great with me. But also keeping up with the Joneses. Because when you start buying into that lifestyle or you start spending more than you need, people start seeing you a certain way. And if you have any sort of a low self-esteem or you're looking for that sense of approval of others, it becomes addictive as well. So that all feeds into it.
And it comes
We
back.
have
It comes back to that girl, doesn't it? That wanted to fit in.
Yeah. She was. It's that little, your inner child just needed to be nourished. But I never nourished her in the way she needed because I never once said, you're all right just the way you are. And, because I never knew.
Mm-hmm.
So it's right now Ireland is like this, or right now it's like this, but you're going to meet a tribe of people that'll just get you and you won't. If I knew that 20 years, if I knew that, but we don't. And this is our lessons. But I don't regret anything in the sense that me sharing this will help everybody else, who's sitting there thinking that they're alone in this. Like money is the most taboo subject. It's more taboo than, race, your sexual orientation, religion, politics. It's the one topic that people just won't go there. As much as we think, like in my world, I'm like, no, people always talk about money now, and it's because I'm in it now.
Mm.
But like other people, when I meet someone new, oh, my family, we wouldn't talk. No, we wouldn't talk about that now. No, 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 no. You don't talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
How many people know? Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. How bad did it get? Because you're now in this cycle, aren't you? You feel bad. You need those 5 minutes. You go shopping. You feel good. You get on the bus. You feel terrible. You go home.
Yeah.
You feel even worse. Then you have the added pressure of, well, the reality of it, taking the emotions out of it, is you probably have envelopes coming through the door that you're terrified of. Every time the phone rings, you're terrified of it. you can actually see the money mounting up on all of these loans and all of these debts. This is a desperate cycle. What is it?
Yeah.
What does it feel like to be in that and knowing that feeling that you can't get out of it at that time, because you're beating yourself up with everything as well. That's a desperate cycle to be in.
Yeah. It got pretty dark for me. It got pretty dark for me because all these things, when you have bad money habits, or in any cycle of where things, when you're going down a road where the end is never going to be, if you end of your day you feel like a failure, and that's a repeated process, it never ends well. So I had a breakup, and there I was, had my apartment, trying to pay the mortgage. I have two young babies. My and I'm battling to make ends meet, and it just felt like I just can't do anything right. The money's coming in, and I hated payday, and the money's going out. Now, I was on maternity leave, and I didn't even know what I was entitled to properly, like outside of my job. But I knew that I wasn't making ends meet, and I could just see myself getting deeper in debt just because, the interest builds interest.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just, oh, it was dark. I remember, but I would still spend
To make
because I
yourself feel
need
good.
yeah, I need the comfort of that.
Mm.
It's like a hug when you spend money. That dopamine kick that you get. Um, so my daughter would be asleep, and she'd wake up in the middle of the night, or my son would wake up, and then that tiredness of being a mother when they're so young. I had two under two, and I would just buy something and I wouldn't remember it the next day. Like, I thought I had €200. Thought I had that for to pay off that. Money be gone. Like, where's that money? Oh my God, Amazon is at the door, or something's at the
Mm.
door. I'd get something like, you'd see things coming through like fitness tracksuits coming in the door.
Mm-hmm.
So I must have, I'll get my body back. I must have had these little moments, sleep deprivation, just doing whatever and just kicking into what I knew best, which was shopping. And it just got really dark one day. I got back to work and I was like, you know what, I could work my way out of this. Had two childminders.
Mm.
Went for a promotion, got it.
What was your work, Santis?
I worked in, oh, this is where it gets even funnier. I worked in the bookies.
Right.
So I was a manager in the bookies. So I saw so much money every day. That was part, I think, well, I've done a lot of counseling and that, but part of it was I didn't see it as money as real. It was removed to me in some sense,
Mm-hmm.
except when it affected me. So you show me €200, I'm like, yeah, I see thousands every day. That's nothing to me,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I worked in the bookies, and that's another topic altogether. But because you have to be removed because of the environment you're in as well,
Mm-hmm.
and which is horrific in itself, on both sides of that counter. But look, I I told you this is like a Hollywood movie. There's so much tears to it, the madness. But yeah, I got a job. I got a promotion, and it was the busiest shop. But I was able to get, like, I think I was getting an extra 200 a week. I don't know what it was, but it was. But I was paying that out on childcare because I had two childminders, so I can go in and work.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, no, this will get better when they get to, when my son can go to creche. It'll just get that little bit better. When that, I was exhausted, and one day, I was just like, my mom had the kids, and I was like, I'm not going back. I'm not doing anything there. And I was very lucky. Like, I don't even know how to talk about this because it's so deep, it's so dark for me.
Mm.
Um, So I was getting, suicidal thoughts before that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd tried before, but this was going to be the time. And I just happened to get a phone call from a friend, and she knew. She knew something was off with me.
What did she
And she
say?
would go to the doctor now. I'm coming. But she couldn't come because she was like, she just saying that. She's like, go to the doctor now. I'm going to be with you. And I went into the doctor. And my doctor, weirdly enough, I've had a family doctor since I arrived in Ireland. And he could see, like, I remember 6 months before that, he was like, are you okay? Because he said something to me. I know normally be a joker.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you could come back and talk to me anytime you want. And he I just ignored him. Like I was like whatever, because in my mind I was like, no one understands what I'm going through. No one gets this.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like what like and I think that's what he saw. I was just like, yeah, okay, yeah. Anyway, just give the babies the shots and let me go. And I went back up there and I just said, I don't feel good. And I would have never said that like I would have been just gone if that wasn't, I call it divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just like, he said this is stress induced anxiety. I didn't even tell him anything about the spending. He was just like, just the amount of work you're doing on the side of that,
Mm-hmm.
this stressful environment you go into every day, and then you're just trying to, like trying to bridge the gap, especially if mentally you're struggling anyway. Um, and then I was in Beaumont then, and they were just I kind of went to the psychs, and then they were just talking to me. But I think the changing point in that was my boss. I had this soup. Normally in the bookies, it's a hard game, and I was never hard. I was always very creative.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like I used to, I'd rather be talking to the lads, the elfless coming in. I'd talk to them, so I would never be the tough girl in there. So a lot of stuff would have been thrown. I was like the only black girl in Ireland working the bookies. You can imagine the environment in there. Um, just smiling away, and
Mm.
it was like everything came to a head. It was just like the self hate, just like what's the point? I'm not doing great with my kids. I'm
Mm.
barely seeing them. I'm failing them every week. I get paid. Like, there was one point it was snowing and I was trying to we were all in a room and I was like, I'm working and I'm in a room trying to heat it.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, what the hell?
It feels like there's no way out of the cycle.
And no one knows.
Yeah.
Like no one knows. No one knows what's going on.
But I guess at that
And
stage you didn't even know what's going on. You
no, I didn't.
you didn't
No.
realize how serious this addiction was.
No, I didn't realize. And I didn't think it was an addiction, so I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize it was a problem. I just
Exactly.
like shopping. Okay, I shop a bit too much.
Mm.
And then I have that feeling of shame. But sure, I've always done that my whole life. So
Mm.
it's you know what I mean? It's not. So why is it so hard now?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's coming to a head.
Mm-hmm.
And every emotion is being pushed into that one relief or release. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not a release. But my boss, I just said to her, this is what's happening. And she was like, I knew you were off. And she was only really new. I don't think she was in the job that long, like at that position. And she's like, look, I get it. Take whatever time you need off. Don't worry about pay. Don't worry about nothing. Just mind yourself. And
Mm.
it's the first person that I'd said it to like that. I said it to my friend, obviously, but for your boss, somebody who pays you money,
Mm-hmm.
who makes sure you get paid, to be able to say, look, it could be a bit of postnatal going on as well, because I'm trying to pretend that everything is okay. And she's like, I could see a few signs, so you really need to take some time out and ask for help, which is something that I didn't really do. Um, and go and talk to your family. And that changed everything for me. Just that one conversation. And then I started looking at like when you get that breathing room and you go, wait a minute, what's happening? Like I can't raise two kids like this for the rest of my life. I can't continue this no matter what job I'm doing. Like I can't do it to them.
Where
can't and I can't leave them like this either.
where do you start to rebuild your life in that situation?
I think it was just being honest with myself. And I knew I was in debt. So this is what's weird. It's not the most amount of debt that I've ever had. I've had debt 30 grand, personal, like it was 15 when I added it all up. It's not the highest amount. That's what, when I added it all up, I thought it was like 30 grand in my head. But when I actually sat down and wrote, it was like 15. And I was like, that's not the worst I've ever had. Like, I know I've had loans that were 20 grand,
Wow.
So, yeah, so like what's the big deal here? Like, why is this 15 grand? But obviously, you have kids, the responsibilities change. And I just I wrote everything down, and it just was such a relief when I realized it wasn't 30 grand and it was 15. And I was like, I can do this. I can do this.
Where did that
How do people...
Where did that strength come from to say I can do this?
My kids. And the shame of knowing that I was willing to walk away from them. It was like like I told you, my mom, she did build a resilient child in the end. She just needed to learn to communicate it and ask for help when she needed it. That's all. And I asked for help by going on YouTube, really. I was like, how do you get out of debt fast? How do people do that? Well, like I used to go on YouTube for everything. What happens when the baby is like mothers communities? Like what would you do? What's this thing now? How am I gonna maneuver this one?
Yeah.
So I did how do you get out of debt? And I found this lady. She was called Debt Kicking Mom, and why I liked her. She's in America. She's like a teacher. There was two income coming in there. And they were just normal people. And I was like, you would never know, by looking at this family in their lovely house. And, that they owed like 70 grand in debt. She was a teacher. You just wouldn't. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
And for some reason, whatever way she talked, she spoke English. Like just no jargon, and I just understood what she was saying. I was like, I could do that. I could do that. And it wasn't even the case of I'm gonna do this. It was like I could do that, and I was cheering her on.
And what were the things that you were saying? I can do that. What were
she was like, I saved in my food shop this week. I cooked this meal and it stretched out for two. And I was like, oh, my kids are only young. Like I could just mash the food up myself and, and do little pots and just meal plan. These are things like, I'm on the hop all the time. So it was like more about slowing down and planning. And I was like, okay, I could just do that one thing. And then I was like, oh, my food shop, which could sometimes be €120 because it was another source of spending. It was just another source of just I'll buy this, because it looks fancy.
Yeah.
And I'll just get this bottle of that, or I'll get this bottle of wine, or I'll get, the things I was buying. Like, notions. Like pure notions. Like, yeah. But I just bought it because maybe I couldn't get the tracksuit this week. but I can get, Tesco finest, or I can get, I could get whatever. Get Yeah, all those black labels are gonna be in the trolley, and it's gonna look great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give my kids only the best
Mm. So how did
because
how did you get away from that?
um just involving enveloping myself in the debt free community. There's a community of people who are have gotten into debt and gotten into the cycle of debt, and
Mm-hmm.
there's quite a lot of us out there who are aware of it, and obviously quite a lot more who aren't.
Mm.
But they were just sharing tips, and it just felt it's the power of community, Rory. Of just being seen, and no matter what our differences coming to the table, it's known that we all made mistakes and we're not alone in it, and we're not stupid,
Mm-hmm.
or we're not, all those shame filled thoughts that you would
Mm-hmm.
have. It just felt really good to hear other mothers, other single mothers, other, two parent, it doesn't matter. It just hearing people that you normally would see every day, your neighbors, the bus driver, the person on the train,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you walk by them every day, and you realize, like, oh my God, we all have so many little secrets that are killing us on the inside, and could very likely kill us on the outside too.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just lovely seeing that. And I just got addicted. Like, I've been recently diagnosed with ADHD. So the dopamine hit, it explains a lot
Mm-hmm.
why I needed that so much. But I was getting that from saving. It started being transferred, and then the early childhood was coming back. I wanted, I started doing no spend days, which are days that you don't spend money.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I saw that one time and I was like, I want to try one of them. And that was like, whoa, I went a day and I didn't spend any money? Like, what? Who is this? I'm really proud of myself. That's like, you know, that's a huge win. I had
Mm-hmm.
over 200 of them
Mm-hmm.
in that year. Got addicted. And if you think of somebody coming off an addiction,
Mm-hmm.
how many days clean? It was the same sentiment of saying, I had, 230 days clean this year.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. And it wasn't about not spending money. It was about being intentional with how you spend money, and cutting the cord from thinking that, you know, your self-worth is based on the purchases that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to look for that dopamine kick. You had to look for that joy within yourself. You had to go. I had to ask myself, like, what do I like doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, most people can't tell you that. What do you like doing if you couldn't spend money? What do you like doing?
Mm.
And and it was like all the shit that I did when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Going out in nature, hiking. I used to go down to the beach. I'm doing all that now.
Mm. So the 15 grand at the start of
Yeah.
2019 that
Yeah.
you wrote out in front of you on A4 pages, when did you
Yeah.
pay that off?
I paid that off in 51 weeks.
51 weeks, that's under a year.
Yeah, I'll tell you how. I listed all the debts out. Now, I was very lucky that I had a few high interest, but not a lot. So what I did was I went from the smallest to the largest. I tried to get everything up to, up on par so I wasn't behind. That was the first thing I had to try and do. I was, and when you're focused, I always say, when you're focused on the intention, the things that start becoming apparent to you, I was like, I can get tax back because last year I didn't work for half the years I was on maternity leave.
Mm-hmm.
There was little things that were starting to happen, things that would have really stressed me when you're in a different mindset. Then you're like, wait, I could get that back. I can do this. I think I cut down on one day at a time, so I didn't need a childminder.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was helping me another day. So that was like, I was paying nearly, was it €1,200 a month in childminding so I can go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Straight away, that was like 700 gone.
Mm-hmm.
So that was able to get everything up, and I was up to date on all my debts. Then I focused on the lowest debt. So it just reduced the overwhelm. Whereas, like I'm like, I have to pay this one today, that one. I just wanted to pay the minimum and everything else and just focus on the first debt.
That's interesting.
And when you focus on the first debt and it's gone, it's a win.
Mm-hmm.
But all your energy was like, when I started, I was paying back over €600 in debt. That's just on debt every month. That wasn't the mortgage, wasn't the childminders, wasn't food. So of course I was in a deficit.
Mm-hmm.
But I was trying my best anyway. And I was paying that back and it was rolling just about. But anyway, I paid the first debt. But when I got that debt was gone and it was €50 minimum on that. And then by that time, I'd raised it a little bit so I can get it down. So I'm looking at ways, I'm saving on my food shopping. Some days I'd even walk into work because my mom was like a 40-minute walk.
Mm-hmm.
But I would walk in and I'd be listening to podcasts about money and listening, like just that would be a moment for me. So I'd leave the kids a little early, walk in. That would save me money on my bus fare going in.
Mm-hmm.
And that money was not going. I would bring me lunches. There was no more like going to the chipper or getting a fancy sandwich at lunch because I was
Mm-hmm.
the manager. I was bringing my salads in, bringing me on water in. Like, literally, like, I am not spending any money in here. People were like, what is wrong with her? Like, and then I was like, then I was having me no spend days when I was in there. So I'd be like, I can't spend anything today. I'm having a no spend day. They're like, what is a no spend day? Oh, it's just this thing, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you want to buy me a coffee today, you can. For all those years when I felt crap and I was buying everybody everything, somebody could buy me a coffee. But I didn't say that. But, I was like, someone could buy me a coffee today if you want. But I'm having a no spend day. If
Mm-hmm.
I'd get a tip or something in work, as in like a customer won and gave money in, I'd be like, that's not for Chinese. That's not to get the kids a new outfit. That is going off that lowest debt.
Mm-hmm.
And before you know, you have that debt down. And then my confidence was just like, oh my God, who is this girl? I'm not spending money every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I am after clearing a debt. Like visibly seeing it, not just, like I know like this debt is gone. So let's just go up to the next one. And whatever money I had that was going off that debt, it just rolled onto the next debt. I didn't go, oh, I have an extra €200 now. It was like, no, I'm going to put that. So they call that the snowball method. So it's building all the time. So by the time I was at my last debt, which was my credit union, believe it or not, I was throwing like 1,200 a month off that.
Wow.
So by the time I was there, I was just like, I'm just gonna give you everything I have, because I can do this. Like I'm after doing, I'm after build, I'm after climbing. It's like climbing steps. I'm after climbing every step to get to that. I'm like Rocky. Come on now, So that was where I was, and I cleared that, and I ran into. Now, Rory, the plan was to run into the sea naked. Because in my mind, I was like, I'm free. Well, you can't be doing that on Portmarnock Beach in Dublin. It's a
No.
public beach, and you don't do that. So I just wore my swimsuit, and I ran in. And it was freezing, and the tide was, I kept on running. The bloody tide was out. So I was like, God. But it was like a moment. You have to celebrate when you do something big like that. And it changed my life. And I'll tell you now, I've been thinking about it the last few days because I've started the Budget Mindset Club, which is for reform spendaholics. But part of what I was thinking about is, okay, you paid off the debt, and that was a win because that's a dopamine kick. You've been pushing that all the way. But that wasn't the icing on the cake. It's the lifestyle that happened. Me whole change in attitude. That's the diamond in it for me.
And
The self-worth.
and that's what I can even hearing your voice when you're sharing from 2019 up until this point
Yeah.
is it sounds like the language in your mind that you were telling yourself changed because you celebrated the small wins, you celebrated the big wins. So if you paid off, it didn't matter if you paid off 500 or 5,000 or
Yeah.
15,000. If it was 50 quid, you still said, well done, Santis. You did a good job
I
there.
100%. And I like the decade mom did in America. I started my Instagram page, and it was like I had needed accountability because left to me own devices, like I wouldn't have stuck to that. But I was coming like no one cared, and I was fine with that. But it was like I was turning up going, this week I paid €100 towards that. This week I paid €200 towards that. This week I paid €20 towards that. And then people was doing their own debt-free journeys, like and there were people started following me because they didn't see no one else doing stuff like that. It's
Where,
like, and then
sorry to interrupt. Where do you, because you were getting such a big dopamine hit from the
yeah,
shopping, where do you get it
yeah,
from now?
I get it from nature. I get it from and this is the truth. I get it from nature. I now found out, like I said, I get it from live TV, doing this, talking to you. Like it's like a buzz when you do little things like that. But I genuinely, on a day-to-day basis, I get it from nature, and I get it from, trying to do better every day. Um, I realize I won't replace that, and sometimes I do relapse. I'm not gonna lie. I'm only human. And for those times, I've really learned to forgive myself and realize I'm only human, and try and reset. It gets me down when I get one of those moments. And I'd lie to you here, Rory, if I said that you know I don't get a kick out of spending money. But now I understand why. And more often than not, when I am going down that road, I'm able to stop myself and kind of say, how are you feeling? Like what's after happening there now? What's after happening? What, you're back in this position. What's after happening? And that's where it's just redirecting it, and redirecting in things that really sometimes it's things that scare me, like going into the Irish Sea is a little bit different from the Caribbean Sea. So it's like, Jesus, I'm running in here again, it's freezing, but that buzz that you get for 2 days after that, it's so worth it. And I'm like, wow, I'm getting that feeling. Or going for a hike and just seeing, and it's those little wins when you're able to, like, in retrospect, kind of look back. And I look back at my kids and the things that they tell me when we're on a hike, when the phone is down, and I'm like, oh my God. And when you think of me, the dark, the tunnel I was in, and sometimes I do get that, because mental health isn't something you just escape from. You can build, and try and self correct and go and get the help, but sometimes you do relapse and you get those dark moments. And those are the I think about those hikes and the fun activities that we do that don't cost us a lot of money, and they're the ones that anchor me. Knowing me kids, and understanding their little, their quirks,
What
and getting to do that.
what do you teach them about the value of money?
Well, my daughter, they call her a mini me. So she just likes spending. So we're trying to curb that, but I have to be careful as well, because be saying no could create the same habits. Um, my son, he is very mindful, but they have their cash envelopes, so I give them cash. And I know the world is digital, because I want them to have a tangible relationship with money for as long as we can. I'm gonna, if they get that for a year, they'll have it forever. So every month they get their cash envelope, they get €10 in it, and they have three simple rules: you save some, you give some, and you spend some. So my son is very empathetic. So if he sees somebody begging or, he's like, Mommy, give them. I was like, no, you give them money. You have the money, you give them.
Mhm.
So he knows that because in life you're going to have to give, and it's good to forward things on, whether it's paying taxes or, you're going to have to invest in your community in some way.
Mhm.
So he has to learn that and save. It's always good to have something there and get into the habit of saving rather than borrowing
Mhm.
and learning that from a young age. And there's nothing, not all debt is bad. Like, and that's something I'd say. But if you don't have the mindset or the literacy, and it's a huge thing, I don't think financial institutions should be in schools. I'll say that.
Mm.
When you think of the models, their models, and there's nothing, not saying they shouldn't exist. I'm just saying they shouldn't be in school unless they can tell you all about financial wellness and the good and the bad with it.
Mhm.
Unless they're willing to be honest with kids, because of course I'd sponsor the local football team. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
If it means it's going to build a relationship, and when I know what can happen with that relationship
Mhm.
of trust.
A lot of people are taught from a very young age that success is defined as how much money you have. How do
Yeah.
you define success?
Um, Success, that's a good question. Success for me is being willing to challenge myself all the time and having peace with that. It's that having peace with the decisions that I make every day is success. I don't equate it with money. Although I don't, like, I'd like to have loads of money, Rory, and I'll tell you why. You don't make changes for things that you believe by being the broke person on the internet giving out. Do you know? You make it by being able to be at that table or, support causes that matter to you. And money talks in this world, but I definitely don't worship it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you're watching the media right now. I was a huge fan of American hip hop and R&B in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Huge fan of the likes of Puff Daddy and all them. And looking at these parties and you're hearing horrific stories, but these were wealthy people that we were all looking at, thinking that they had it all and they were perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just see sometimes wealth and money can be a mask for so much. So I definitely don't think. I think if you're an asshole with money,
Mm-hmm.
without money, you're an asshole with money. And if you're a good person, and a lot of people that are really good, they have a negative view of earning money and acquiring money. But if they just understood how much they can do with the money, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how much they can do if they had that money and, the power in this world, the changes they can make.
Mm. And the
So,
changes that you've made to yourself as well,
yeah.
because it sounds like the little girl who felt she didn't fit in and felt different now fits in.
Yeah. Or is proud not to fit in.
Is proud not to, is okay with being different.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually celebrates it. I was at the school waiting for my kids, and the parent was talking to me, and it was something that I forgot, and I was like, "Oh Lord, I can't believe I forgot that." And then, I'm probably a little bit eccentric, but her little girl was just staring at me for the whole time, and the mommy walked away, and she said, "You're weird," and I said, "I am," and I go, "So I'm very proud of it."
Yes.
But she didn't say it in a way that was an insult.
Mm-hmm.
She said it in a way that she feels weird as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, yeah, and like the world is very grey and you need the weird people to add a bit of colour to it. And she was like, yeah, you do. But her mom came back and was like, what did you say? Jesus. And I told her, she goes, she'll be thinking on that now. Thank you.
Wow.
And you realize that maybe we're not all meant to fit in. We're all meant, maybe the world needs a bit more color and people that think differently.